Hi everyone and welcome to Moonstone Home. My name is Tommy. Thank you for being here. Today I'm going to be sharing with you my birth story for my son River. He was born on May 24th, 2021, which at this point was 6 weeks ago. And it was a really great experience. As was the birth of my first kid, who was my daughter, who's almost 3 now. If you're interested in seeing my birth story vlog for her, I will link to it below. They were both born out of a hospital, not a home birth, but a birth center birth, which is at a midwife's office. And they were both unmedicated, and they were both really incredibly good experiences. And there was a lot about the two births that were similar to each other, but also a lot that were very different. And they were both just amazing. So today I'm going to talk about River's birth. But I will start at the beginning, which was before he was born. So he was born about 2 weeks early, and in contrast, Lucy, my daughter, was born 5 days late, according to the due date, which we all know is a little arbitrary. But it was about 2 weeks before my due date, and I had been off of work. I started my maternity leave from my office job about a month before my due date. And so I had been off of work for, I think, about a week and a half. And I was not ready to have him yet. I was ready to have a baby. Like, I was emotionally and mentally ready to be there. But I really like being pregnant. I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm to and through. But I just really enjoy pregnancy, especially in those in the third trimester when you're like, your body is just really different than how it normally is. And you're the most pregnant that you can be. I don't know why. I have no idea why. I really enjoy it. I mean, there are a lot of things that go on with your body that are not comfortable and that don't feel good, especially at that point in your pregnancy. And those things were true for me. But even with that, I think I really like to mix things up. I really like change. I'm a creature of habit, but I also really like weird spots of change in my life, if that makes sense. So I'm just kind of into the fact that things were different, especially with my body for a short period of time, and I knew they were going to go back to, normal-ish, but I really enjoyed that period of time where things were just different. So anyway, I wasn't ready to not be pregnant anymore just because I was enjoying it so much. I was also just enjoying my downtime because, well, I did already have one kid. I was on maternity leave, so I wasn't working, and I was just enjoying myself. I was having a really good time being pregnant, not working, and I wasn't ready to be done with that yet. But River had other plans. So the story starts like this. I was filming a video for my other channel, Moonstone Makes, which is a channel where I record videos about my knitting. So my very last Moonstone Makes proper episode about knitting, I had just recorded that episode. I was in my bedroom, I record on my bed, and I had turned off the camera. I was gathering up all my stuff and I was getting up off the bed. And as I got up off the bed, there was also, I should warn you, this is a birth story, so there's gonna be TMI. So, you're warned, you're forewarned. So I got up from the bed and I felt a little bit of a gush down there. Now, I knew at that point I was kind of within the window of like, your water could possibly break. So I definitely had that in mind. But I was also in this window of pregnancy where incontinence is like kind of a thing with some people. So, and that hadn't happened to me before in this pregnancy. So I honestly didn't know which one it was. It wasn't like in the movies, your water breaking, all of your amniotic fluid comes out. which is how I imagine it happens. I have no idea because that's not what happened to me. And it didn't happen to me with Lucy either. My water didn't break with Lucy. I went into labor with contractions, and I'm sure my water broke at some point, but I didn't notice it. I did spend some time in a birthing tub while I was in labor, so it could have broken in there. I have no idea. So I don't know what it felt like to have my water break, but it did just feel like a small gush of fluid. But it was small. Like, it wasn't too much, but it was definitely like something. So I was like, okay, that might have been my water breaking. And I was kind of bummed because I didn't want to do it yet. But I didn't know. It could have just been that I couldn't hold it anymore. I don't know. So I called my midwives. I should also say that I didn't have an OBGYN for this pregnancy. For both this pregnancy and my first pregnancy, I saw a group of midwives, and that's it. I didn't have an OBGYN or a doctor or anything like that, and I wasn't planning on having a hospital birth or a home birth. I was planning on having my baby at the birth center, which is just the midwife's office, and there's like a big room in their office that's essentially a bedroom with a bathroom and a giant tub in it. And that was pretty much my birth plan. My birth plan was to, see what happens about going into labor, go there, have my baby, no interventions. You can't have pain medication or be medically induced or anything like that at the birth center that I was going to. So everything was going to be unmedicated, stuff like that. I am one of those people, I don't like the term natural birth because all births are natural. But anyway, that was my birth plan. Anything beyond that, I had no control over. I'm not the kind of person who has like a strict birth plan that I like had bullet points written out and stuff like that. I knew what I wanted, which was no interventions and at the birth center, but I knew that if anything needed to change, I was okay with that. I spent a lot of time during my pregnancy informing myself about all of the aspects of giving birth and all of the possibilities and all of the interventions that could happen and why they might happen and when they might happen. So I was prepared for anything, and pretty much my main goal was just to get this baby out when the time came, healthy, and that's it. So I was prepared to have the birth that I wanted, but I was also prepared to do whatever I needed to do if that didn't happen. So anyway, I called my midwives, and she kind of talked me through it. It's a group of midwives. There's like 5 of them, I think. And whoever was on call that day is who I talked to, and she kind of talked me through it, asked me questions about what happened, and she said pretty much you couldn't really know unless you test it. Like, it could have been amniotic fluid leaking, because that's a possibility, which I wasn't really aware of. Like, when your water breaks, it can just break all at once and it's really obvious, or it can leak. Like, there could be a rupture and it can just come out slowly, the amniotic fluid, which is the fluid that your baby is sitting in your womb. In your placenta, something like that. I forget the terminology. But so she said it could have been that, or it could have been incontinence. So she came over to my house. Well, before that happened, I continued to edit my video. After I got off the phone with her, I was like, well, what can I do? So I edited my video, I uploaded it to YouTube. I'll link the episode down below. It's it's the very last Moonstone Makes episode before I stopped recording to have River. So I edited my video, I kind of went about my day. I was home alone. Lucy was at her grandparents' house and Colin was at work. And so luckily I got to just rest, because I knew that if it was my amniotic fluid leaking, I didn't want to do too much. I didn't want it to be my amniotic fluid leaking, really. I wanted it to be nothing. And I wanted to chill for another 2 weeks. But anyway, after I edited my video, got it uploaded, and I was relaxing for the day, my midwife came over to my house to give me a little swab. So it's essentially a long Q-tip, and you can dip it into the fluid that you think might be amniotic fluid, and if it turns blue, then it's amniotic fluid. And so she gave that to me, and she gave me one, and she said that you have to have enough to actually dip it into it. It's not enough to just like touch it to fluid. Like you have to be able to immerse it in fluid. So that was going to be tough because at that point it did feel like I was leaking like a little regularly, but it wasn't like, it kind of just felt like a teeny tiny bit of pee every once in a while. And that's what it felt like. So I couldn't really like catch any of it. So that pretty much went on for the rest of the day, and I wasn't able to test any of it because enough didn't come out at any particular time. So the rest of that day, I just kind of took it easy and kept an eye on it, and I didn't have any other symptoms going on. The next day, and that was a Friday, the next day was Saturday, and it was the same thing. I went through the whole day and I was still leaking, kind of like every time I would like do anything high impact, which I wasn't doing anything high impact, but if I like, stepped too hard or had to like, I don't know. If I had to like get up really fast or something, like a teeny bit would come out. And I still wasn't sure which one it was. But it was never enough to like catch in a cup and like test at the swab. So I just kind of went through that whole day doing that. And it actually really started to get to me by the end of the day because I felt like, at that point, I kind of felt like this must just be incontinence. Like, if my water's broken, like, would it just go on like this, So I kind of was convinced that it was just pee, and it was really getting to me. I started getting a little, like, self-conscious and, like, just upset that I'm going to have the rest of my pregnancy, like, just doing that a teeny bit all the time. It just felt horrible. It felt really bad when I thought that that's what it was. So anyway, then it's the next day. Sunday, I finally am able to catch some because it started coming out a little heavier. And so I took a cup into the bathroom and I got some and I put the swab in it. And Saturday too, I kept in contact with my midwives. And so we were talking this whole time. Sunday, I was finally able to test it, and it was blue. So it was my water slowly leaking from the placenta. And so I talked to them about that, and they kept asking me questions like, how's everything feeling? Are you still feeling the baby move? Stuff like that. And also, when she came over to my house on Friday, she brought over a hand Doppler and listened to the heartbeat. So on Sunday, I went in. She felt for movement, which there was still movement, but at that point, once I found out it was amniotic fluid, I was getting a little concerned. Like, how you hype yourself up? Like, is the baby moving? Like, is this actually happening? Like, I thought it was happening, but is it happening? And I start paying too much attention and I start not knowing. So that started getting in my head. Like, is the baby okay? And so anyway, I went in on Sunday to the office. She tested me again there and verified that it was amniotic fluid. My water had broken, like not fully broken, but like ruptured, I think is maybe the term. And so she did the Doppler again. Heartbeat was fine. Baby was moving and my water was leaking. So she said, at this point, you need to have your baby, now that we know it's amniotic fluid, you need to have your baby within 48 hours. And that's the dump truck driving by my house, threatening to wake up my sleeping baby. I'm gonna flip. Anyway, so I needed to have my baby within 2 days. And if I didn't, I would need to be medically induced per the standards of stuff. And so if I didn't have my baby within 2 days, I would need to go get induced at the hospital. And I didn't really want that. So I was like, okay, let's hope this happens. So she's like, go home, rest, get a good night's sleep. Hopefully you have your baby tonight or in the morning. And if you can rest as much as you can, then you'll be rested for the labor. So I went home, I did that. I actually slept on the couch that night because Colin had painted the bedroom ceiling the day before, not really realizing I was going to be bringing a baby home within the next couple days. And I knew I was going to have to sleep on the couch, but I didn't know it was going to be like my last night without a baby. So I slept on the couch that night and I actually got a really good night's sleep. But the next morning I woke up and one of my other midwives called me and said, "You're going to have this baby today. Like, it's gonna be today. You're gonna have this baby today." So what the plan was to try to naturally induce me by taking castor oil. Now, castor oil is one of these things that you can do to get your labor going, but it is never recommended for anybody to do it on their own. You got to do it with a supervision of a medical person or midwife or whatever. Whoever your person is, they should be telling you to take it. I think it's never recommended to take it on your own. So she said, "We're taking castor oil today." And what castor oil does is it is a, what do you call it? It's a mover. It gets things moving. It's the opposite of, what is it called? Gosh. Anyway, it makes you have to go like really bad, and it's supposed to give you diarrhea is what happens. And I think the idea is that it gives you diarrhea, and when your body is trying to get that kind of stuff out of your body, it's contracting your muscles, and those contractions spur the correct kind of contractions that you want for labor. So I had to go to the store and I bought castor oil. I went to 2 stores before I could find it. I finally found it at CVS, and it took 2 people to help me find it. It's in the beauty section because it's apparently a hair and eyelash conditioner as well. So I got the castor oil and I got some ice cream and orange juice. And what they told me to do was to make a milkshake in my blender out of the castor oil, vanilla ice cream, and orange juice. So I did that, and it was actually pretty good. It just tasted like ice cream. And I took that at about 9 a.m. And she said, "After you take it, I want you to just come over to the birth center, pack your bag, bring your husband, get Lucy to her grandparents' house, and you're just going to be here for today until you go into labor." So I did that. I took an ounce of castor oil, I think, which is like kind of half the dose that they typically recommend. She was like, "I think you just need like a little push." So I drank my milkshake. I got all my bags together. I got Colin. He wasn't planning on stopping work so soon, so he worked from like 8 a.m. to like 10 a.m. when we went to the birth center and said all of his paternity leave goodbyes to his employees, and we packed up and we went over there. We got to the birth center around 10 and we just hung out. I mean, we talked to him, she checked me. I think I could be totally wrong about this stuff, I kind of don't remember, but I was like a couple centimeters dilated at that point, which you can be a little dilated at like any point close to being in labor. So we pretty much just hung out there all day. And I brought a bunch of food. I brought snacks. I was really hungry all day, so I snacked all day long. And I just hung out in like their bedroom, and we, read and watched stuff on the computer, and, just talked, and we went for walks. And pretty much I was just waiting for one to go into labor, but I was essentially waiting for diarrhea to happen. And they kept coming in to check on me. It was 2 midwives who were absolutely amazing, and I love them so much. They were both there all day, and they both kind of just came into the bedroom off and on all day to check on me, see how I was doing, check on the baby, do the Doppler, check the heartbeat, stuff like that. And at about, I want to say noonish, the diarrhea never happened. So she had me take another dose. This time she had me take, I think it was a full dose, which was 2 ounces. So she made me another milkshake. Sorry, Laura, if you're watching, but your milkshake was not as good as mine. It was kind of gross, but that's okay. I got it down. It's not a big deal. And so I drank 2 more ounces of castor oil and waited again. And about 4 o'clock, something started to happen. And this was after, like, seriously, from 10 to 4 of just like waiting at the birth center. Also, I should say during this time, I was starting to get pretty worried about the baby. Like, it was definitely in my head, like, is this baby moving as much as he's supposed to be moving? And I couldn't tell if he was. I didn't think he was. I was like really concentrating on trying to feel movements. And I was just paying attention too much. And I was starting to get worried about that, but they were checking his heartbeat and everything, and they were assuring me that he seemed totally fine. So close to 4 o'clock, before I started to feel something, I knew that if I didn't go into labor by the end of the day or like by the evening, we were starting to talk about the next step of like, if it doesn't happen today, you're going to need to go to the hospital. So by like 3 or 4, I was starting to be prepared to transfer to the hospital. And I was totally fine with that. It wasn't my ideal. I didn't really want a hospital birth just because I really like the private, calm, home-like nature of the birth center. And I didn't really want any interventions particularly. So, that stuff being available wasn't anything to me. But I was okay with it because my main priority was getting this baby out of my body safely and healthy. So I'd say around 3 o'clock, I was starting to really give in and be like, okay, I am prepared to go to the hospital. Whenever they tell me it's been too long and you need to go to the hospital, I'll be down with it. I'm just going to pack up my stuff and we're going to go and it's going to be fine. So I had totally given into that whole idea. And then at about 4, I started feeling some contractions. And they were really mild. They were just kind of crampy. And I also should say that throughout this whole thing, I had been feeling like Braxton Hicks contractions, where it was just like feeling like a vague tightening of everything in that area and then letting go. No pain, nothing like that. It was just a really vague tightening and then letting go, which is really common for the end of pregnancy. Like people feel that in their last week or their last month or whatever. So at around 4 o'clock, one of those contractions that I had been feeling had some pain associated with it. I know a lot of people don't like that word pain to go with contractions, but really that's what it was for me. But it wasn't bad at all. It was just like a twinge of like, I feel something. It was like, this is something that I can feel. It feels like crampy. So I told the midwives and they were like, okay, this is probably it. Let's go. I was kind of going through the motions and they were timing them and seeing how long the contractions lasted. And that I don't know. I didn't time any of them myself because I was just kind of in it. And they started out very mild and very regular and very close together. So contractions started and they would ease up, and then like really soon after that they would start again and then ease up, and they really I shouldn't say gradually, they really progressively got more and more intense. And by this point, I am lying on the bed. There's a big bed in the room. I'm lying on the bed, on the edge of the bed, on the left side. And I'm on my side, and I'm just resting there. I'm resting on my side, on my left side, on the edge of the bed, like on the very edge of the bed. I've got some pillows. I've got a pillow between my legs. I've got a pillow on my arm. And as they start to get more intense, I start realizing that this is like really it. And I can see, but not really, I'm not really paying attention, but I can see and sense the midwives in the background, like setting up all their stuff, like all their like medical stuff or whatever. I can see them setting it up. And I'm like, when I see that, I'm like, okay, this is actually the thing. I think I'm like in labor. Colin's there with me, and I gotta say, going through these contractions and in this labor, I felt so much more in control than when I was in labor with Lucy. And I won't go into too much detail about Lucy's labor other than to say that it was very similar to River's labor, but way longer. Like everything that happened in River's birth happened in Lucy's birth, pretty much just extended over a much longer period of time. And like a more slow progression, whatever. But going through these contractions, once they did start to get really intense, which they did, I felt so much more in control, and I know the reason for that is because I actually learned how to breathe through contractions this time. I didn't really do that with Lucy. Like I didn't take any like in-person birthing classes, but I watched a bunch of YouTube videos because that's what I do. And I learned a lot, and getting through the contractions with Lucy's birth was really intense. But I got through them fine. Like I didn't really think much about it afterwards, like that they were like so bad or anything. Like yeah, they were painful, but like whatever. Pain is relative and it's fleeting. Like I don't have a problem with pain. But looking back on how I managed myself with River's birth versus with Lucy's birth through the contractions was so different. With Lucy's contractions, I was like getting through them by like really, I don't know how to describe it, but I was getting through them just by like being like kind of, well, really, what am I trying to say here? Like like going into myself, you know what I mean? Like shutting out the outside world, really being in my own head, like closing my eyes and like just like kind of bearing through it. And like, you know, I'm making noises. I'm like, I wasn't screaming. I didn't scream or curse or anything like that. But I was definitely making noises, which is a good thing to do when you're going through contractions, is to get vocalizations out of your body. But with River, when I was going through these contractions, I kept in mind this YouTube video that I watched by a birth doula named Taylor. I forget her name, but I will link to her channel and the video below. But she's a birth doula who has YouTube videos, which I've watched many of, and they're really great. And she has a couple of videos on how to breathe through contractions. And I watched those videos more than once to practice and to like really get it into my head. And I used those techniques to breathe through the contractions with River. And pretty much essentially this is what it is. She calls it, okay, I forget what she calls it. It's a certain type of breath. But when my contraction was coming on, and they did really quickly get really intense and like pretty painful. And so when those really intense, painful contractions came on, I would breathe by inhaling through my nose, like, and then really controlled and just really focusing on my breath rather than on the contraction. I would breathe out my mouth and kind of do like a downward push to my breath. So I was like breathing out my mouth, but I was pushing most of my breath energy down through my body. So it kind of looked like this. It was like, and like that wasn't my full breath, but it would go on. And I would do that over and over again throughout the whole contraction. And some people do more like vocalizations, but I didn't. I don't know, it just didn't like feel like it came to me in the moment. But it was like it's like a yoga breath too. I think it's like Ujjanasa breath. No, I should not guess at that. I don't know what it's called. But there's a yoga breath that does that too, where you're kind of closing off. You're not like blowing out a candle. You're not like, you're like, but anyway, I'm really bad at explaining it. Watch the video if you're interested. So that's the breathing exercise that I did through each contraction. And it seems really simple, like just breathe slowly through your contraction, but it really made all the difference, like really focusing on that breath. And it was really impressive to me, like how easily I was able to get through these intense contractions, just like focusing on breathing. Like breath is amazing in the way that you can use it. It really is. So that's like my number one tip. If you're going to be going into labor at some point, really learn about breathing techniques, watch that video, and when you're in it, try to keep it in your mind to focus on that breathing, because it's distracting is what it is. It was distracting me from the pain of the contraction. So anyway, that's how I got through the contractions, and it was really amazing, and I just felt so much more in control. I didn't feel like I was like spinning out of it, you know what I mean? which I did kind of feel like with Lucy. But I just felt so grounded through these contractions. Anyway, so I started feeling something at like 4, and they really progressively got more and more intense really quickly, like really quickly. After 4, I wasn't watching the clock, but it happened really fast. So the contractions happened really over and over and over and over and over again until eventually the first thing that I noticed is when I went from, like, I don't know what it's called, the contraction phase to the pushing phase, was my breathing started having vocalizations go along with it. So all of a sudden, out of nowhere, like I didn't even make it, I don't know why it happened. My body just did it. Through one of my contractions where I was doing that breathing, all of a sudden, when I was exhaling, it wasn't just it was like I was starting to make noise with the exhale. And the midwives were like there, and they were like, good, that's really good. You're like doing really good. And I was like, oh my God, am I pushing? They didn't tell me to push. They didn't say, okay, it's time to push. I didn't like even realize I was starting to push until I noticed my breathing was changing. It's like it happened without me. It was really strange and really cool because like my body just did it on its own. So I'm still at this point in the same exact position. I did not move at all. Once my contractions started to like when they told me I had to change positions a little bit when my baby was almost out, I did not move at all. I was like, don't move me. I can't move. I have to be just like this. So I was on my left side still, at a pillow under my arm and between my legs, and that's just like how I wanted to be for the rest of my life. So I started pushing in that position, and at this point I was like I was almost falling off the edge of the bed, I think. Like I was really close to the edge of the bed. I was like hanging on to the nightstand next to the bed. So at that point I was pushing, and they just kind of like, they did direct me on like how, like when to push, how to breathe while I was pushing, and pretty much I was just pushing with every contraction, and it was tough, man. Pushing a baby out of your body is really hard. It's very beautiful and magical and wonderful, but it's really hard work. I mean, being in labor, enduring contractions, pushing, it's endurance is what it is. It's like you have to keep making your body do something when all it wants to do is like relax and stop and just chill. It's very difficult. But anyway, so yeah, at the pushing stage, I just kind of did as instructed. I was given a lot more instructions during that phase, which was good, because it helped a lot. And at one point, they did want me to kind of change position a little bit to help to give the baby a better area opening to come out. And I was very reluctant to do that. I was like, no, I can't. And they were like, you kind of have to. And I was like, no, I can't. But I did. So they took the pillow out from between my legs and kind of like got me into more of a traditional, like, well, I was still on my side, but like one leg had to go up more. And I still had the pillow under my arm. And I remember in my like really hazy state, because I was really out of it at that point, I remember somebody trying to take the pillow out from under my arm. And I don't know who it was or how it exactly happened, but all I remember is in my mind being like, nope, no effing way is anybody taking this pillow. I need it. I need this pillow more than life. And I hung on to it with a death grip, and somebody was trying to pull it away from me, and I was just like, nope. I held onto that pillow so tight. So whoever it was eventually gave up and let me keep the pillow. But so yeah, pretty much that's how he was born. He eventually came out, and it was a little different with Lucy this time too, because with Lucy I felt like she just came out all at once. But with River, on one particular push, And I like had to like, I remember kind of like changing like my butt position a little bit just because it felt right. And they were like, yes, that's perfect. And then he finally like started to come out. And when I could feel him start to come out, I thought I was done. And I was like, okay, great, I'm done. And they were like, no, he's not all the way out yet. So he came out, it's, I think, kind of slowly in like maybe 3 like sections or something. But yeah, he came out, Colin caught him. And uh, at that point, I was like, because I had been so, like, I had had it in my mind that I was kind of worried about how he was doing. I was immediately like, let me see that baby. Is everything okay? Is he doing good? And he was. So he was born at 6 something. I don't remember. I don't remember these details. I should have looked them up beforehand because I wrote them down. But he was born at like 6:05 or something like that, which, yeah, means my labor was 2 hours. I had a 2-hour labor. That is insane. I was pretty surprised. Like, after all that, I was like, what time is it? And I realized it had been only 2 hours, and I could not believe it. But yeah, so I kind of pushed him out in almost a side-lying position, and Colin caught him and put him up on my chest. And right before I knew I was, well, when I knew I had started pushing, I was like, okay, I got to get my clothes off. So I took my shirt off because I wanted to make sure that when he was born, I put him right on my skin. So Colin passed him up to me. He was laid right down on my chest, and he looked great. He looked healthy. He was 6 pounds 3 ounces when he was born, which is funny enough. He was born 2 weeks early, and he weighed 6 pounds 3 ounces. Lucy was born 5 days late, and she weighed 6 pounds 4 ounces. So weird. I don't know. But yeah, it's weird, the feeling that I've had both times after giving birth. It's like such an intense experience, like a really nutso intense experience, like really primal, really like just out there, different than anything I've ever experienced in my entire life. And then as soon as they're born, it's just like so like it's so relaxed and so calm and so it's just over in an instant. It's like all that intensity, you're way up here, and in an instant, you're just like, and so it was great. He hung out on my chest for a little while. He eventually started nursing, and that all went really well. And, you know, after that, I had to deliver my placenta, which was super easy. And then they kind of gave us a little bit of time to relax, and then they came in and checked me out, and I did tear, so I had to have some stitches, which wasn't bad. So they did the stitches, and, you know, they checked me out, and I did bleed a lot, like a whole lot. Even like before I actually went into labor, I started bleeding, which I had kind of forgotten about until this very moment. But I was kind of concerned about that too. I was like, is this normal? Am I supposed to bleed this much? Because I didn't bleed with Lucy like that. But yeah, a lot of blood came out. I remember that now. But yeah, everything was fine. It wasn't like too much blood, according to them. They weren't worried about it. And that, yeah, after that so it was like 6 when he was born, and me and Colin and him and them just kind of all hung out there and did all the stuff we needed to do for about 4 hours. And I ended up going home at, I think it was about 11. I know a lot of times, at least I think a lot of times, when you have a hospital birth, you actually stay in the hospital like overnight, like maybe a couple days, I'm not sure. But that's not how it works at least my midwifery birth center. You stay for about 4 hours, like as long as it's needed to do all the stuff that they need to do afterwards. But then you get to go home, and I'm very happy about that. So we spent that 4 hours kind of, you know, they checked him out, they checked me out, they did all the stuff they needed to do to me to like get me going. And, you know, it's definitely feels like a big wound right when it's over. And like, you know, it was very hard to walk and get to the bathroom and go to the bathroom, and like, you know, they helped me do all the stuff I needed to do to get managed down there. But after I did, you know, I just kind of hung out there with River and Colin, and I was like taking selfies and stuff, and I felt really good. Uh, I brought some, like I said, I brought a bunch of food, including like you're supposed to bring like an after birth meal to feed yourself like, right after you give birth. So I brought some chili that I had made and had in the freezer, and I ate that with some toast, and it was really great. I drank coconut water, I drank lots and lots and lots of regular water, and yeah, we went home at 11 or so, and we live less than a mile from the birth center, so that's kind of amazing. And he slept in the car right over. He was so tiny. I forgot to bring diapers in my hospital bag, so they gave me one, and they gave me all the other supplies that I needed for like postpartum and stuff. I think pretty much the standard stuff they give you at a hospital too. And yeah, he slept in the car ride home, and when we got home, Lucy was spending the night at her grandparents' house, so that it was just me, River, and Colin that first night. And Lucy's first night home, she slept really good. She slept through the whole night, which she wasn't supposed to do. I was supposed to wake her up to nurse her, but I don't know what happened. I didn't. And so for River, I set an alarm for myself to, like, when I went to bed. When he was asleep, I set an alarm for, like, I forget, 2 or 3 hours later so that I could wake up and nurse him. But he woke up himself. He did not sleep like Lucy did that first night. So he was up a lot that first night. And for the next quite a few nights, he woke up a whole lot during the night. So yeah, I spent the next day like trying to figure out our latch, and I just spent it in bed with him. And I did the whole thing where you pretty much spend the first 2 weeks like in bed. And Colin took 3 weeks off for paternity leave, which was amazing. And Lucy came home from her grandparents' house the next day. So they brought her over the next day, and she got to meet River, which she did so good. She's been so good with River this whole time, including that first day she met him. She's just so sweet with him, and she seems to really like him and enjoy his company, and she loves being helpful with him. So, yeah. So that's pretty much it. I hope I'm not forgetting anything. I probably am, because it's been 6 weeks since I did this, and I probably should have like filmed something sooner when everything's really fresh. But it was an amazing experience. It was very intense and very fast, and just really amazing. And I had such a good experience. I love that I've chosen the path of midwifery for both of my babies. It's just very, I don't know, it's very me. It kind of aligns with a lot of the stuff in my lifestyle and I don't know, how I am, who I am. And I was very happy. Like I said, I was prepared to go to the hospital and be fine with it, but I was very happy that I didn't. That I didn't have to do the hospital thing, that I didn't have to get medically induced. And yeah, in terms of like pain medication, that's not something I ever even really considered that I wanted, just because, I mean, it's like, I have a ton of respect for people who do opt for pain management in their childbirth. But for me, I just kind of don't care that much about pain. Like I said, my kind of philosophy with stuff like that is pain is fleeting, and kind of the only pain that really bothers me is when something's painful because something's wrong, then it's scary. But when something is painful because it's just how it is, like, I don't really have a problem with it. And like, childbirth can be painful. And so I knew that going into it, and I got through it, and now it's over. And that's kind of how I feel about that. Is just, I don't know. I'm also kind of a minimalist when it comes to a lot of things, so I just kind of like, my instinct is like the less that I could do, the better. I put that bad. I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah. So that's it. That's my birth story. I had River. Oh, and his full name is River Lee Trujillo. And then, I mean, like, as far as his name, it doesn't mean anything. There's no great reason why we chose it, other than we like it. We kind of did with River what we did with Lucy, is where we started with we just sat down and listed off a bunch of boy names that we liked. And as we thought of new names that we liked, we added them to the list, and we kind of sat with that list for a really long time, dwindled it down, we eliminated things, and at the end, it came down to a dead tie between River and Ezra. We really love both those names. And it was very hard to choose at the very end. Like, those last days when we thought we had more time and we're like, I guess we're having a baby today, apparently, we still hadn't chosen between Ezra and River. And I still really love the name Ezra a lot. But we ultimately decided that River was just kind of more fitting for us and who we are and how our family is, I guess. I don't know. We decided on River. And Lee is just a middle name that we love, that kind of seemed to work with all the first names we liked. So, yeah, but like River and Ezra, we didn't really get from anywhere. Like, pretty much, I don't know any Rivers or Ezras except for famous people. Like, we didn't name our baby after famous people, but like we knew, like there was a famous River actor. What was his name? River Phoenix. And then, of course, Rivers Cuomo from Weezer. We kind of considered Rivers or River, and we ended up going with River because we liked it better than Rivers. And Ezra, of course, if you have heard me talk about her at all, you may know that I am like a huge fan, and I'm completely in love with Ezra Furman, who's a musician that you should definitely check out if you are into rock music, I guess. Her music is way more than just rock music. Anyway, I love Ezra Furman so much, and I definitely wasn't naming my baby after her, but I think I love the name probably because of her. Anyway, so yeah, we just liked the name, and we think it sounds really good, and we think it kind of fits with our family, and that's where River Lee Trujillo came from. Okay, I'm gonna leave it there. I hope you enjoyed listening to my birth story. When I was pregnant, both times, I loved hearing people's birth stories, especially YouTube videos about them, because I'm a visual person. I like seeing people talk about stuff like that. So I watched a ton of them, and they were all very fun to watch and informative and entertaining. So I hope this was some or any of those things to you. If you enjoyed the video, please do feel free to like, subscribe if you haven't already, and comment down below with your thoughts on any of this stuff. When did you have your babies, if you have babies? How did you do it? Do you remember? I hear that with time, all of this fades. These memories, the feelings of, like, the sensations, the physical feelings that go along with being in labor kind of fade from your memory. I don't know if they could ever fade from my memory. Those feelings of contractions and pushing are burned into me. I don't know. I'm sure in 20 years they'll fade. I don't know. Tell me, what do you think? Okay. I hope you're having a really great day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.